David Bohm Seminar Series 1, Sunday, November 13th, 1988, 11:15 morning session, Ojai, California.
Well, I hope it's clear what we mean by representation and presentation, and that the great importance that attaches to this question. Now, I would like to say, now look, we have, most things are limited. Insofar as something is limited, we've said then if it's represented as limited, it will be presented as limited and we will respond to it in a limited way, right? It will not be total. Now, but what about the unlimited? You see, there are words like all, forever, never, absolutely, absolute necessity, and so on. Now, these really imply the unlimited, right? All just goes on and on. Right? It cannot have any limits, right? There may be all of these things, but that's limited, right? All things of a certain kind. But all by itself, what does it mean, right? It goes on and on, right? And when you use the word all, it's very powerful. When you said Germany above all, you see that meant great power, right? You see, the word all and similar words like forever, never, and ever are very powerful emotionally. They liberate a great deal of neurophysiochemistry and values of all kinds are very powerful. And therefore, the representations of totality of all are particularly important, right? They have a very important part to play in discussing this, because they will be, you'll find that they are very close to the source of the difficulty. Now, the representation and presentation. You see, all cannot be presented in perception, right? Therefore, how do you ever get to know about it, right? So all must be a thought, right? See, so all is a representation, but you get a sense of presentation, nevertheless, right? Now all is present, you see. So so this brings in the question of what do we do about the representation of totality, of the unlimited, you see, of the infinite. You see, the word infinite means the same as unlimited, right? Because finite means limited. It's the same root as finish, definition, to limit, define, to limit, right? So therefore, it's also, the question is, can we know the unlimited? Right? Can it be put in knowledge? We may suspect perhaps it can't, or some people may feel perhaps it can. Now, this is closely connected with the idea of the self, because in some sense it seems that the self is represented as unlimited. Right? You see, the subject is felt. We have the object which stands in front of us, literally, and the object is limited, especially in literal thought. Each object is limited, right? According, first of all, to its quantity and size. It has a boundary. Secondly, its qualities are limited. It's this sort of object and not that sort, right? And thirdly, whatever power it has is limited, right? Whatever ability to do something. So it's limited in all these attributes. Now, then what about the subject, the self, the me, the I, rather the I, right? In principle, it sounds as if that's represented as unlimited, because the self, the I is supposed to be, first of all, the one who limits everything, who defines everything, right? And determines, the same root, terminate, limit. And also the I seems to be simple and identical, always the same. Fundamentally always the same, though it may change in secondary attributes, right? And finally, it's in contact with everything. You see, the whole world, right? It seems the whole world enters as part. The I is present in everything we see, right? So there's a kind of unlimited quality about the I, at least the way we represent it. Right? And you can see that in how that comes out. You see, in some sense, it seems that as we developed more and more literal thought, made objects out of things, then the participatory thought began to retreat, and retreated into the more personal, into the self, right? And the never see, we're always using some of it, but there's a sense that that's where you can still have it. Now, there's this. Now, probably even by the time of Moses, literal thought had gone a long way, and the story is that Moses, went up the mountain and he, I don't know, it was somewhere in the desert, and he saw this burning bush, and talked to and it made a voice. It had a voice, so he talked with it, and the voice, he asked him, "What is your name?" And he said, "My name is I am that I am." You see that? Say, "Who shall I say sent me unto the tribes of Israel?" So the voice said, "You shall say that, quote, I am sent you," right? In other words, the meaning of that episode is that I am, God was saying that I am is his name, right? I am is the name of God, right? Of course, the word God could be equally replaced by the word dog, but that's an arbitrary word. But I am is in some sense the natural name of God, right? You see, because I am said by itself, you see, it means unlimited power, right? Everything, if it could talk, might say I am. And I am without anything attached to it suggests something unlimited. Now, as soon as you attach something to it, then it gets limited, right? You say, I am here, I am rich, I am poor, I am this person, I am here, I'm a member of this group, and so on and so on. So now, you then, at that stage, you are treating yourself as an object. You say, I am is the pure subject, but then me represents the self as object, right? It's, you say, right? Me is limited. It can be pushed around. It has to have a place, and it has to, You see, as civilization developed, it was necessary. First of all, they started treating things as objects, not participatory. Then they had to treat people as objects in order to organize them. Then eventually every person had to say, I too am one of those objects, which is called me, right? But you have another name, I, which stands for the subject, right? The subject by itself would mean something pure and unlimited. The object is something limited. Now, there's a problem there when I is identified with me, right? In other words, we make a representation in which I is identified with me. Now, how can we experience the two as the same?
It thinks itself in one case has been unlimited, but yet it feels that it's limited. That's a paradox.
Yeah, but that's the paradox. But it comes in the language. It comes. We have two names for the same being, I and me, right? I stands for the unlimited being, and me, who takes action, who has free will and everything, and me stands for somebody who is limited, and just another object who has to. People say, the little child may think he's wonderful, he's unlimited, and then they say you're not unlimited, you're limited, right? You're not the great I am, right? You see, so.
But in the language, I, in the subjective case, can imply a separation because I am not you.
Yeah, but you've limited it then, you see. That was why Moses didn't say and add anything more to the name of God than I am, right? If he had put anything more on it, it couldn't have been God, right? One more word and it would have been ruined, right?
But our common experience is constantly a process of that separation.
Yeah, whatever I say I am, I'm limiting, right? I am here, I am there, I'm not you, Whatever I say, it's a limit, right? So, therefore, that's a contradiction, because I am is intended to mean the unlimited, but then we also say society requires us to mean that it's limited. We therefore identify the two words, right? And say they both mean the same being, the names of the same being, right? And now, remember the power of the name, and this name is the name of a concept, right? And the concept is the subject, the I, right? And we've described that concept already a bit. Now, the point is then, according to the way this is represented, then that's the way it will be experienced. Now, if it's represented as a contradiction, you're going to experience a contradiction, right? conflict between the limits of the unlimited I am, who should be intended to be unlimited, and the me who has got to be limited. And the me is limited not only by society and by the limited physical power, but also limits of time. Born at a certain time, mortal, dies at a certain time. I am ought to be eternal. And in fact, according to this Jewish religion, I am is eternal, right? Because I am is the name of God, right? And there's absolutely no limits. It created everything. You see, the sense is, to the little child, maybe I am creates everything, you see. Just as we were saying about the brain producing the whole picture, right?
What is the correlation between I and me then? I mean, what's the difference in
Well, me stands for me as an object. Me is what other people see me as, or what I see myself in the mirror, right? As an object standing out there. Or I may picture myself by an image as an object, right? Now, I am cannot be pictured, right? There's no object that could stand for I am.
How does it fit in to say,
Because the I am includes everything.
Well, that's Descartes' reasoning. You see, I could criticize that. You see, I think that he was putting some limit on I am by saying I am is essential quality is to think, right? You see, but that's a limit to I am, right? Now, whereas the word I am by itself doesn't have that limit. No. Say if you, I am would be the best name for God. You see that whatever is meant by God is meant by the words I am. Now, therefore, when you use the word I am, you mean God, but then you say it's limited. You see, which is a contradiction. You see, in another meeting, we were saying, suppose you say I am a bank manager. You could equally say God. If you said God is a bank manager, it would seem a little silly to have created the whole universe and then just limited himself to being a bank manager. So,
for example, this I am resembles to some degree what they use in Indian philosophy, Satchit Ananda, which is a group of concepts called being, consciousness, and joy. So in that sense, I am is like being and consciousness.
It could be all that, but if we describe it too far, we're going to start limiting it, you see, because maybe it's also unconscious. You see, I am should not be limited. Now, I'm not saying I am exists or doesn't exist. We're just talking about it as a concept, right?
I in itself already a fragment in contrast to we.
Well, but you see, we only introduce we because we have already many I ams, you see. And therefore we put them all together in the concept of we. We are, you see. And we are is limited because there's us and them, right? So the point is that the pure concept is I am, right? That it's alone, right? I alone am. That would be what God should say.
I am when the self is not.
I don't know. I alone am. Imagine yourself being God, you see, and say, what will you say? See, the right thing to say is I am. And I am that I am, that's all, right? And I have no restrictions on my being at all. The fact that I am covers all that I am, right? And there's no restriction whatsoever, you see, and that's the meaning of that term, right? And nevertheless, we say we can't organize society. If everybody went around that way, it wouldn't work. So, and in fact, that's the source. In a way, that's the source of egotism, because everybody is saying, really, I should be God, but in fact, I'm limited. But I feel uneasy about that, right? And therefore, I've got to extend my limits. I've got to get greater. I've got to be the King of Kings. I am the greatest. You know. I am wonderful, did this, I am that, see, egotism is trying to make a representation of the self as unlimited, right? Trying to make it plausible by doing things, or by having things, or by doing something, or having something, or being something, right?
Using all its energy to cover up whenever its limitation is exposed.
Yes, but the point is, by representing it that way, it becomes the presentation, just as in the case of the idols. So eventually, a person starts to worship the presentation, right?
Say I'm absolute without that meaning I am perfect. It could be any degree of anything.
Well, absolute means unlimited. You see, it means...
So I can say I am intelligent, I'm wonderful, I'm stupid, I'm crazy. I'm all of those things at all the time. I mean, you know, at various times. Couldn't it be that way?
Yes, but you see, if you say that you're limited, you see, the point is, you wouldn't want to say that. You could say God is crazy sometimes, and that He's, irrational sometimes, and so on. It doesn't seem to make sense. You see, when somebody is stupid, it really means he's limited. You see, in a false way. You see that your intelligence is limited, your power to act is limited. You weren't able to rise to the occasion, right? You see, it meant there was some limit on you. You see, when somebody criticizes you, it really means you were limited. You were not that great being you thought you were. You were not the person who could be stupid if you wished to be and intelligent if you wished to be. When you were stupid unconsciously. It was not because you wished it, but because it just happened, right? You were a limited object who just had the quality of being stupid. You see, that's what's meant when people criticize it, right?
And make the representation that it is God.
What?
Not stupid, that happened to be stupid. It can make a representation that it is the unlimited.
Yes.
Some people, for instance, they reach the point of that kind of stupidity that they make the representation that they are really ambassadors of God.
Well, that what
degree of stupidity.
You can represent yourself as the ambassador of God. You see, being more modest, but really that's because you're too frightened to say you are God, right? People will say you're crazy, right? Most of the time, anyway. So the point is that you can say you're Napoleon, or you can say you're, all sorts of things. The Pope, or.
It does.
The point is that there's an urge that within this representation there is an urge to magnify yourself, to become a megalomaniac. You see, to extend and extend and extend. You want to become the greatest. You want more money to show what you are. You see, or more power, or more this, or more that. Right? You see. You want to be sure about yourself and so on. You see, it's all the same. You see that. So you could see that in this problem of the unlimited, there is the origin of egotism, right? Now, and with all that goes with it, you see. Now, not only the ego of the individual, but the ego of the group. You see, there has been a word in the English language which is not used now, which was called the we-go. Or it was called... but you could take that to mean the collective ego, you see, the we-go. Because then you do the same with the group that you were doing with the individual, right? So we are the greatest, you see. This country is the greatest, whatever, you see that. Now, so you can see that this question of how we represent the unlimited is crucial for thought to operate in an orderly way, right? If once that gets going, there can be no order because this is supreme, right? Supreme value overrides everything else. The ego will override, the considerations of the ego will override everything, right? Including rationality and truth, and I mean, there'll be nothing to stop it. So...
unlimited is everybody and everything.
And all nature and whatever. Unlimited you can't say. You see, it goes beyond anything you could say.
There's no I.
Maybe not, but you see, but the sense of I am is the sense of the unlimited. I'm not saying whether there is or isn't. I'm discussing the concept, you see. I'm saying this concept exists in humanity. It's part of our language and part of our thought, and we have to look at it. I'm not saying that I am is the unlimited. I'm saying I am means the unlimited. Like the, yeah.
I want unlimited wealth, unlimited power, unlimited social position. Is this the sort of thing you're talking about?
Yes. And now, if you ask yourself, you say, why should I want it? I mean, it's, you see, in fact, I go to terrible trouble to get it, and I ruin myself and so on. You see, and when you get it, you're not satisfied because it's still limited. Right? So you say this makes no sense when you looked at, but still, because we do not see that the representation of the unlimited becomes the presentation, and then the discovery that we are limited creates the demand to get more, right? You see, we can't just stay satisfied with being limited, at least once you get into that. Now, so you can see the importance of the question. Now, so we have to say, how can we get a coherent representation of the unlimited? That's one of our questions, right? And now you can see that literal thought, in some sense, thought is calling itself the unlimited. I've given this business I am, right? But also, literal thought tends to attribute to itself the quality of being unlimited. You see, because it says everything is exactly as it is represented. And also it tends to spread. You see, there's no reason in literal thought to stop it here. You see, religious people say, no, you can use literal thought up to this point, but from here on it's sacred. You mustn't go, right? But it doesn't stop, you see. There's no reason to stop within literal thought. All the sacred tenets of religion have been overcome by literal thought, by saying people said, there's God beyond this. We don't find God anywhere. You know, we extend through the heavens and everywhere. They say there's the soul, the immortal soul, which you can't deal with that way. But say scientists have gone in all through the brain and so on. They say, where is the soul? People working in artificial intelligence are claiming that you're going to represent everything that way. They haven't done it, but they at least very great confidence and faith that they can do it, and which gives them the energy, right? So they represent this thing as a practical certainty. Now, I'm not saying they're right, but I'm saying that's what's happened. Huh? Now, so within literal thought, there is a tendency to keep on spreading and saying, literal thought can cover everything, right? It can grasp everything. But whatever thought grasps is limited, you see, because thought can only grasp what is in a concept, what is in a category, what can be given a name, and so on. And that is limited, right? We've seen it's got to be this and not that.
Thought can only know what it knows. It can't know what it don't know, and what is unknown is infinitely greater than what we know.
Well, that's what we're saying. But I'm saying, but literal thought implicitly denies all that. You see, I'm not discussing whether it's right or not. I think we just got to look at it. You see, now literal thought denies all that and says, everything that exists or that is could be known by means. Maybe we don't know it yet, but it's the sort of thing that could be known, right? Now, we could extend literal thought on and on and on, and perhaps the artificial intelligence people plus the physicists and some others could say we eventually get it all, right? Like they're talking today about a theory of everything, you see. So that's the way. There's a dynamic in literal thought to say it covers everything. You see, it grasps everything and puts everything within its limits, and that implies that everything is limited, right? There is no unlimited, there's only the limited. Except for literal thought itself, right? Which can cover everything. But it must, in some sense, limit itself to not covering itself, right? You see, to saying it cannot limit itself in its ability to limit everything else, right? Otherwise the thing would collapse, right? So in some implicit sense, literal thought implies that it's above all this, but at the same time it's caught in the other side, which by following physics and chemistry and biology and neurophysiology, it's implying it's all contained in this, right? You see, so it's sort of working both ends at the same time. Now, and of course, if you say literal thought covers everything, then that implies literal thought is God, right? Literal thought determines everything instead of God. God was supposed to set the limits of everything, but now it's literal thought, right?
Literal thought crowned itself to God.
Yeah, implicitly, but explicitly it's very modest, and it says we are very modest. We're just doing our experiments in our thinking and doing our job, each one of us, and so on, you see. So now that's one of the points. Then now there's probably a contradiction in this, but it's rather subtle and very hard. I'm not sure I've grasped it, but you see, I don't think it's necessary to. Well, at this stage, we won't try to grasp that contradiction, but merely you can notice that if literal thought is accepted in this way, the process of thought itself is not going to work, you see, properly, because it's going inevitably, when you make a representation of thought as that the representation covers the thing exactly as it is and it covers everything, then there can be no room for any difference between the representation and the presentation, right? Literal thought says it is impossible for the presentation to differ from the representation, except insofar as our knowledge is incomplete and we could extend it, right? But basically, the representation and the presentation are the same by implication, right? And therefore, there's no room to get any evidence that it's different. You see, like saying when you walked into the ship, which was supposed to be there, was a laser image, then your hand went through it. That was a case where the presentation disagreed with the representation, and you had to think again, right?
It's obviously false, because I can't eat the representation of an apple, no matter how.
Yeah, but you see, but it's a very attractive idea for many people. You see, and in fact, for example, people who are doing artificial intelligence have made some sort of idea like this: that if you had they have a thing called the Turing machine, which is supposed to represent all kinds of computer programs, right? And then they imagined that one was so great that it would represent the whole brain of Einstein, so that you would ask the machine any question and it would answer it the same as Einstein. Now, you see, I'm not saying you may feel this is ridiculous, but that isn't the point. The point is that some very serious people find it attractive to think that way, right? That it's in the structure of literal thought that it brings this about. You see that it's not. I don't think at this stage it's going to be relevant to criticize that or not to criticize it, but just notice what's happening, right? And and say that this literal thought will first of all not work, because it will not make it. It means we are trapped forever in this problem we're talking about.
It can't work because thinking which is discontinuous or quantized cannot touch that which is whole or continuous.
Yes, but you see, the people who believe in literal thought don't believe that any of that exists, you see. They say there's nothing exists but what can be touched with literal thought.
You're saying that knowing is the highest form.
Yeah. And it's a large number of people who actively believe it, but it is implicit in our culture that everybody believes it.
And it can be
But
proved.
it's very limited, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that can be proved if I stay within my thought. I'll prove that there's
Yeah, but
nothing
because you're
outside.
constantly going to present what you have represented, and you're constantly going to exclude everything else, because you will never pay attention to what doesn't fit.
Thinking cannot solve itself.
No, it can't, but these people can't see that, you see.
The instrument cannot see itself.
Yes, it cannot, but these people don't see it because the way the representation works is to present it in a certain way, saying that anything else is impossible, and therefore you can't find it. What?
Materialist?
Yeah.
But the evidence now, it is so big that the weapons can destroy in 1 second the planet. So the literal thought reached to the point to have such weapons to destroy the planet in 1 second. And so that big evidence may come to the point to make the literal thought to glimpse that something is not right.
That's true, yes. For some people, but there are some people who have gone so deeply into literal thought that they simply exclude that evidence, that evidence is automatically excluded and said to be insignificant, right? Unimportant.
Apparently we have a great investment in the literal.
It seems like most of civil society, in one way or another, is denying the evidence.
Yeah.
of how far we've gone. It isn't just
Yeah.
particular scientists.
No, people generally don't want. We've seen this all the time. People, the whole point of literal thought, it's moving. It's also driven by a desire and by the wish for the body not to be disturbed, and so on. Bringing in that evidence might produce a lot of disturbance, and so on. You see, so.
Give an example. That's just on the right track. If I had two different problems, one in 1969, putting a man on the moon, the tools used to solve that problem was computers and, say, Newton's laws of motion. Another problem would be, if I go back to my home in Newfoundland, my grandfather 100 years ago built a boat with a hammer and a saw, a wooden boat. One set of tools for that particular problem. Now, the first set of tools, the hammer and saw, could not put a man on the moon. The computer could not make the boat. Now, my question, what you're saying is that the human mind looking at itself, which is reason, which is logic, among other things, maybe that tool, reason and logic, our own mind, cannot see and solve the problem that it's faced with. We have a problem that these tools can't handle.
Well, we're not certain whether they can or can't. We're saying, let's begin. See,
well, at least aware of the fact that maybe we can't.
Maybe we can't. You see, we mustn't proceed further than we know. You see, now so maybe we can't. You see, now. But we're saying here you have a problem, or whatever you want to call it. It's not really a problem, because a problem, you project a solution. We can't, you see. Now it becomes, you can see the tremendous importance of getting this question straight, because this is really at the source of the stream, of the pollution of the stream, right? Now, religious people have had a feeling for that and said you've got to get right about God. You see, that's the source of the infinite and the unlimited, right? And saying if you can believe in God, you give over to God, and so on, and that seems to bring order. But as I pointed out, it never did fully bring order. People fought about God because they limited God, right? Said it's our God and not their God and whatnot. But and in any case, science eventually went round it all, sort of, and made a move, or they call it an enveloping move, which sort of made it look as if the whole set of assumptions behind religion were of no point, right? So but still it was concerned. You see, they're getting priorities right. You see, because the thought of the unlimited is the first priority. It's inevitable. It will be presented as first priority, you see. And if it's wrong, it's going to be all wrong. Now, because if you're wrong about all, then it's all wrong, right? So, all right, so now what I'm suggesting is, okay, that this tacit or explicit approach of saying that thought can handle everything, that everything is limited, seems to lead to all that trouble, and let's put it aside, right? And say, suppose we start in another way and just explore the assumption that there is the unlimited. The unlimited is, right? Is that which is. Now, if there is the unlimited, then we say we apparently have a contradiction, because here is the unlimited, but here is the limited. The unlimited is apparently limited by not being able to be the limited, right? So if you said there's God on one side and us on the other, then God is limited because he can't be us, right? So the way out of that is very simple, to say there is no boundary. The unlimited includes the limited. So therefore, the true being of the limited is the unlimited. Right? Now,
the creator or the creative energy of the limited?
Well, you have to say the unlimited limits itself. That is the meaning of creation. You see, not that something else limits it, because that would make it limited. Now, you see, I say that is a coherent way of doing it. I have not proved that the unlimited exists, you see. But I'm saying that if we think this way, it's going to be coherent, and it will produce a coherent presentation, which will produce a coherent action, you see. Now, as to whether you can come in contact with the unlimited in some more direct way, that may or may not be. You see, what I'm saying, clearing this up would be a step anyway, because as long as thought goes in all that gyrations, the brain is going to be so turbulent that nothing could be seen anyway. Now, so we say there is the unlimited, or better yet say the unlimited is that which is, right? And which includes the limited. So the true being of the limited is the unlimited, so why do we say it's limited? You see, well, there's a good reason for that. That's a representation. See, it is, the representation is limited, right? It contains limits and it's limited. And it highlights certain things in the presentation so that we can take action. Is that clear? So, therefore, we are now clear that to say that this is, literal thought says this is just what we think it is, but now we say this is not what we say it is or think it is. It is only so in some rough sense, similar to it, right? For certain purposes, right? And saying really, the unlimited isn't it's all the unlimited, and therefore the limits of representation and presentation guide our action our action is toward the unlimited, and if it engages the unlimited properly, it will come back coherently, right?
Are you saying in this sense that the word chair is an abstraction?
Yeah.
But the object itself,
that's an abstraction.
is an abstraction.
The fact that it's separate is an abstraction. Even science is leading to that conclusion, you see, today, that we say it's made of atoms which shade off into the environment, but these atoms are supposed to be part of a field which is universal. They're just concentrations of a field, right? And so if you went deep enough, it would shade off into space and unite with everything else. So, see, the basic scientific picture is to say that all the separations are abstractions. They are representations of separation, which are correct guides to action. That, you see, because they will present it in such a way that when we act, it will be right, you see. But we are always engaging the unlimited.
These are explicit orders out of the implicit orders.
Yeah.
That's where we have to function, I guess, or live.
So if I say that's a chair, and I say it feeling it up to a point, there'll be no problem. But if I say it's a chair, and the experience
Literally.
of it is absolute, then I'm in trouble.
Yes, with literal thought, that is literally a chair and nothing else, nothing more and nothing else. Then we're in trouble because the whole thought process is disrupted by that.
Real trouble.
So limited is part of the unlimited.
Yeah.
Aren't we making representation a kind of division?
Why is it a division?
Because it identifies.
No, we're not. We're saying it's only a representation. You see, a representation itself is part of the unlimited. You see, thought exists, and it's a real process, and it's part of the unlimited, right? Thought is, but everything is part of the unlimited, so that doesn't make it different, special. You see, see, we're not saying that thought is unreal or anything like that. Far from it, we're saying thought is real, right? But
any action that it does take is still limited.
Yes,
the
it's still
limited
limited.
cannot take an action that is unlimited.
Well, except insofar as anything could. You see, I'm trying to say any action which is taken in the direction delimited by thought is limited, you see. That exactly.
Are you saying everything is everything, or either nothing is nothing?
Well, it's both, you see. That.
That's what I mean. It's just everything is everything.
Ultimately, that's it. We're getting to the participatory view, which is that everything is everything, and eventually everything is nothing, you see.
Right.
You see, it's no thing. You see, now nothing may mean just vacuous, or, we get frightened of the word nothing because it sounds terrible, you see. I've got nothing, you see. I'd rather have something, you see. So, but and in a certain area that makes sense, right? To have no food or no shelter, something would be very bad, right? But when we apply it at this depth, we're confused, right? You see, so we say we have the word nothing. Now it's a nice derivation. It literally means no thing. Now let's look at the word thing. I've forgotten what its English derivation is, but in Latin it comes from the same root as real. The word res means thing in Latin. And the word real means it's a thing. And reality is everything. And and also the word res comes from the past participle of the word reri, R-E-R-I, meaning to think. So at that rate, it means the thing is what you can think about, right? The thing is the presentation of what you can think about. Well, you see, so the language seems to have the insight in it some way. Perhaps the people earlier, sometimes derivation of words give insight, and maybe it's like the archaeology of the thought process. It shows us how people might have been thinking a long time ago when they coined these words, right? So and maybe they had a more or less mechanical perception. Now, therefore, what do we mean? See, reality might mean everything, but in that case, it would mean only what can be known, you see. That is, because we could say that what is limited, what is finite is what can be known, and what is unlimited cannot be known, right? The unlimited, there's no way to grasp it in knowledge. Now, it's not that we don't know it, but there's no way to get it into knowledge, right? Now, so if we use the word reality according to that derivation, the reality would be that which could be known. You see, that's I'm not saying we should use it that way, but it's an interesting way of thinking, right? And we say that which is goes beyond, right? That which is the unlimited. Now, reality in that way of using the word would be the totality of the limited, or extending the limited as far to unlimitedly or something. You see that the reality means that it's a thing. You see, it really has some perhaps substance or permanence, or it exists.
So reality is a category and not total description.
Yes, the unreality may mean it's an illusion, it's not a thing. In that sense, it's nothing, it's an illusion. But then, see, the word nothing has these two meanings. It may mean something worthless, an illusion of no value at all. Or it may mean the no thing, which is the ground of everything, right?
The desire of these literal inquirers or scientists to try to spread the known, totally cover the unknown. To use it that the known somehow can discover and quantify what they don't know, but trying to find something that'll cover all that and turn it all into the known.
Yes, because they talk openly about theory of everything. You see, some physicists, you say, okay, I say that you can't get that because I think even reality is unlimited in the sense that however far you go, they can always discover more, right? But aside from that, beyond that whole question of reality is that which is, the unlimited, the unknowable, right?
Because we live in two worlds, the outer and the inner. The outer world is composed of things, and the totality of that is everything. But we also live in an inner world, which, as you pointed out, is perhaps even more extensive, and in which you don't have things at all, but you have plenty of ises, because they are also real. As Jim pointed out, after all, a chair is energy plus form, and the things that he talked about, the archetypes, symbols, and so forth, are also forms with energy, and so they exist, but they aren't things because that's out. And so maybe that'll help that somewhat.
Yes, the reality. You see that there is that which is beyond things, and things. You could say that things are formed from this energy and so on. And you see, thoughts give rise to forms, and these forms are then make representations, which then enter into the presentation. Right? Now,
the implicit statement "I am me" is the same process as some particular group of scientists trying to construct the theory of totality, right?
Yeah. You see it, you're constantly forced to extend the me to cover everything. If you say I am me, right? See, but if you say I am, whatever it means, we don't know. But I am would be that view would be to say that that which is of the nature of a being of some sort could be some form of consciousness or whatever. Right? That's what we mean by the word I am. Right? That may or may not be correct, but I'm trying to say, what does it mean? You see, we're discussing, we have to get clear what these things mean before we can raise the question of what is true. If you don't know what it means, what is the point of asking what is true?
It's not representation, breaking off a piece of the unlimited and make it limited.
Well, but we don't have to do it that way. You see, that in literal thought, that's what happens.
Representation.
Becomes the presentation of separate limited things. But now we're thinking differently and saying representation is not that which is. All that it is representation, right? But at the same time, it guides our action, it infuses our perception, and gives us a sense of that which should stand out and pay attention to, right?
So in other words, even the concept of the unlimited is contained in that. It is really only a thought, a concept, the unlimited, but it has a certain property in that it points at something.
Yeah.
It hints at something.
Yes, it hints at something, but we're saying that as long as we're caught, we don't get clear on this, really not just, we're getting it clear at a certain intellectual level now, but it's when it's in actual life that this question is always arising, right?